Welcome back, fellow scrappers. 3-9's fine. If you're coming back for another video, thanks for coming. And if it's the first one of my videos you've seen, hope you can stick around and watch it all, and we're maybe going to educate you. First of all, what I'm going to show you here today is how I do things. Don't really call it an instructional video. What you see me do, you do at your own risk. But today, I'm going to take you step by step through how to make a copper purification cell. If you watch my previous video on copper purification cell, you will see the setup that I originally have. This is going to take you through step by step how to build it, and hopefully it doesn't get too long. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about what you need to build one and the costs associated in doing this, which it isn't really all that bad. So the first thing you're going to need is a stainless steel container. You can go ahead and get these at a thrift store or something like that. I kind of want to get into a situation where I'm using all of the same stuff, so I have consistency in my results. What I'm using right now, they're different sizes. Things work differently on them. I'm going to be building two of these today. I'm going to run them off of the same power source. So you will need a stainless steel container. I bought this one off of the Amazing Zon on the interweb. This is supposedly a 4-quart container. Under the category of don't believe everything you see on the internet, I can tell you right now, you can't get 3 quarts into this thing. Right at 3 quarts. So 4 quarts, the conversion chart was apparently off. Also, what I find a little strange is the magnet doesn't stick here at all. But it does there. And that's seamless. So I have no idea how it can stick here or not stick here and stick here, but I don't think this is the greatest stainless steel in the world, but for the purposes of what we're doing, it should work no problem. This costs $13, and first thing you can do is take this and get rid of it because we ain't going to use it anyway. So, some of the other things that we're going to need a cover, and this is just a plastic cutting board I bought at the dollar store for $3. You're going to need a basket. We're going to do this a little different than the other one. If you saw my other video, I use a coffee filter type thing. I got a huge container load. It's like 72 containers for $10 at the dollar store. And in that, there was a bunch of containers this size. There's all kinds of sizes of containers in that thing, but this is, that's the stack of those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 of that size. So I can go through a few of these. I use the other size containers for other things anyway, so it doesn't hurt to have them. Nice thing is they'll have lids with these. The ones that I've done previously with the coffee filter setup don't have lids, and I kind of have a tendency to fight with the filters. You're going to need a drill, because we're going to be doing some drilling. You are going to need some drill bits, then obviously. We are going to need a skill saw, because we're going to be cutting a hole into our cutting board. If you don't want to use a skill saw, Dremel, whatever you want to use, but we need to cut a hole in there. I'm also going to, I didn't do this on my previous cells, but there is, if you see how much overhang I got here, there's that much overhang. It's just basically in the way. So I'm going to actually cut this cutting board down. The other thing versus my previous videos, I would be drilling a secondary hole into this to add water to it, because as these run, the water tends to evaporate out, and it is a giant pain to try to slide it off to the side and pour water in, and it's hard to see what level you're at, so we're going to be drilling a secondary hole in there. The other things that we're going to be needing is You're going to need some wires with alligator clips. They're kind of nice. These were $3. The nice thing about these is there's essentially 4 alligator clips in there. I can take these wires, cut them in half, and these are rated for 5 amps, and that's what we're going to be running on this. The other thing I'd like to use is a fuse holder. This takes an ATC, or a normal automotive fuse, the bigger blade fuses. Again, $3. I bought these at Auto Value Auto Parts store. So there's $6 there. You are going to need a variable power supply. And this is what I have here is my variable power supply. I picked this up off the Amazing Zon. $45 for this. So all total into this, I've got 13.45 is 58, and 6 is 62. So you figure about $65 into this. The other thing you're going to be needing is some filter material. I use, if you watch my last video, I use these polyester filters. It's actually a tablecloth, polyester, 100% polyester tablecloth that cut down into squares that'll fit in these baskets. So that is all of the things that you should need aside from the copper sulfate that you will need and the distilled water. And we'll get into that when we mix up the solution. If you're real safety conscious, a roll of electrical tape, yeah, you can use it if you want. You might see me wrap a couple of things just because of where they're at, but it's probably not all that necessary. So we're going to go ahead and get into this. The first thing we're going to do, of course, is we got rid of our lid for our stock pot. And we're going to put this off to the side for kind of a little bit here. Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, and I'm going to sit this down on this. You could use a tape measure. It would probably work just as well. I'm going to sit this down on here, and we're going to figure out just exactly how much of this we need. I'm going to take my marker and put a little mark here. And I'm going to set this off to the side, pardon me, because that is just going to be in the way at this point in time. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut that down to size. I don't know what this is called, framer square maybe. I'm not a carpenter, but I just want this to be straight. So I'm going to mark that off. And I'm going to plug in my saw, and I'm going to go ahead and cut that. Alright, we have that cut down to a size that's reasonable for our lid. Like I said, I'm doing 2 of these. So I'm going to go ahead real quick and cut up the second one as well, since I've got everything out. Now, another advantage that these are going to have over my original coffee filter design ones is these have a lip. So there will be something to hold them, other than the fact that the hole is just smaller than what the coffee filter was. So we're going to drill or cut a hole into these boards so this can sit in there and sit on that lip. Now, if I had a scribe or a compass or something like that, I could measure that hole and I could make a perfect circle, and I don't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a carpet knife. I'm going to leave this together for support. I'm just going to go in here. And I'm going to cut this lid, because we're going to do this anyway. There. Save this piece. We're going to use it later. But now, I have a template for my hole. And we're going to shoot for the center. I'm eyeballing it. So there we got that. Now we're going to go ahead and drill a hole in here. We're going to take our saw and we're going to cut that open. Drill bit in the drill. And we're just going to drill into this. I don't want to say that drill bit might be a bit dull, but one would have thought it should have drilled through faster than that. Now we'll go ahead and take our saw and we're going to cut our hole in here. Perfect? No. Good enough for the women I go out with? Yep. Look at that. Fits right in there. And now you'll see that lip sits right on there. And that's not going anywhere when we put our copper in there. So I'm going to go ahead and do the second one, and we'll get right back. Alright, perfect. Now we've got two of them that the basket sits right in. Perfectly. If you want to get rid of your little fuzzies around there, around your edges, just take your carpet knife, and I'm just flat with it. It'll clean right off. Alright, so we got our two tops made now. I've got two of those stock pots. So the next thing we have to do is finish our baskets up. Alright, so the next step that we're going to do is we need to have some holes in here so the copper that's in the basket gets out of the basket. And for that, this is really flimsy plastic. If you get hired dollar ones, you can probably drill some holes in the side of it, but this is pretty flimsy. It is rather rigid around the bottom here, so with a 1/4-inch drill bit, I'm going to drill some holes in here. I'm not going to get real carried away, but probably about a half a dozen or so. Alright, so there we have some holes in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. Fairly evenly spaced. And again, I'm just going to go ahead and clean some of this plastic up a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and do a second one because, like I said, we're making 2 cells. So we'll be right back. Okay, so while we were off camera, I went ahead and I got both of my baskets done. So this is what the baskets look like. And this is how it's going to fit into the stainless steel kettle. Just like that. So next thing I want to do is I want to put a hole in here, as I said, so I can fill this up without having to slide this over, and it's a lot of dinking around. So I want to put a little hole in here so I can see my level and I can fill my fluid. Now, when I did this is tight basically to the top of the container. So anywhere between here and here is where I can put a hole and actually accomplish the goal we're trying to achieve here. So I got the biggest drill bit that fits in my drill, which is a 1/2 inch. I'm going to drill a hole right in here next to where that is. That was easier said than done. So now we have a hole in there. And if I put my basket back in, I can now see inside, and I have a little beaker that I use to fill these up. So, all right, I'm going to put the hole in the other one, and on to the next step. Okay, so now both of my boards have my holes in them, and my baskets go in, and we are ready to get to the electrical portion of our program. So, for that, we're going to go ahead and open up our alligator clips, because when you build a copper cell, one side, and that's where the copper goes in the basket, is going to be positive. The other side is going to be negative. So the negative side is going to be the stainless steel pan, and that's what the copper is going to plate onto, and then you can just easily scrape it right off of there, and you'll have pure copper on that pan. So I'm only going to need one of these, because technically it's the ground side. When you do this, you need a 12 volt AC power, or DC, sorry, direct current power supply. I showed you the variable one at the beginning of the video. You could use like a battery charger or something like that. I choose not to. I choose to use something that I can adjust the voltage and the amperage on. I've seen where people do it the other way. So all I'm doing is I'm going to make 2 equal lengths here. Go ahead and cut it. And we're going to get the old trusty wire strippers. And we're going to strip the ends of this, so we've got a place to hook our ground cable to from our power supply. Twist that up. Because I'm running these off of the same power supply, I'm just going to twist them together. So that is going to be my ground side. Now when I hook these on, nice thing about these stock pots, they got a handle. We're just going to hook it right to the handle. And the reason, if you watch my original ones, they're bolted to the pans. The reason I decided to go this route is because when I go to dump the solution out of the pans and clean them up, it's kind of a pain dealing with that wire stuck to the pan, where this way I can just take the alligator clip right off and I'm done. The guy can even go here. Might be better because it's flatter. So that will be the ground cable to our power supply. Next thing we want to address is the filters themselves. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take this little blue ring off. It used to be our lid. We're going to grab out some filter material. Now when I made these, the next time I can make these smaller because they are way too big for these baskets. But we're going to go ahead and put that down in the basket. We're going to put our ring back on the top. And now that ring is going to hold our filter material into place. The nice thing about this now is on the old cells, I had an awful lot of wicking that used to occur. And that shouldn't happen now because I can cut these back a little bit. If you get a little better containers, this will probably work a whole lot better, but these are fairly chintzy. So it is what it is. So we have our filter on there. And now I can go and trim that up a little. I can go ahead and trim this up a little bit so there's not so much hanging around and bothering me, which is one of the things I didn't like about the other one I'd done. And there we have our basket. It sits right in there, just like that. And you can see I've kind of wasted a lot of material on the other way I was doing it, so I'll be able to get more out of the bag, or out of the tablecloths when I do them the next time. So that's our first one. Here's our second one. Want to make sure we get enough of the filter down in there, so when we put our copper in, it doesn't pull through. And there we have it. Okay, we're going to go over to where these sit, and we're going to get the rest of this hooked up. Alright, we have our new copper cells in their forever home. You'll see I've labeled them number 3 and number 4. The original 2 cells I have are 1 and 2, and that's going to come into play because we're going to be doing some yield experiments with this. You'll see that I have my negative cables hooked up to my power supply, and the next thing we have to do is we need to mix up some copper sulfate solution to pour in these. Then we're simply going to drop the anodes in, hook the power cables up to it, and we're going to let her go, see what happens. But I'll show you how we mix up the copper sulfate, and we'll go from there. Okay, we're going to mix up our copper sulfate, and for that, what you're going to need is copper sulfate crystals. You can buy these at, I got these at Menards, but any kind of home improvement store. And distilled water. So what we're going to do is we're going to pour the copper sulfate crystals into our distilled water. And no, there is not a measurement to this. I'm just pouring. And then we are going to shake vigorously until the copper sulfate dissolves. And I want to put a little more distilled water into this jug. This one's about empty, so pour a little more in there. Like I said, each one of these kettles holds around 3 quarts. Lid on there, and we're just going to shake it. And what you're looking for is that nice blue color. It basically looks like windshield washer fluid when you... Kind of what we're after right there is that windshield washer fluid color. Now remember when I set these up, I did put a pour hole in there. That pour hole is to add water after they've been running, because some of the water will evaporate out of these as they go. My experience on my original setup is I go through about 200 milliliters, 250 milliliters of water every day. This is what I use to refill it, a little beaker here. And I just put distilled water in and keep sending it, so. And you don't have to get real carried away with that. That's probably as dissolved as it's going to get. So for starters, I'm just going to go ahead and pour this in to my first one. I'm going to try to make sure I don't get any undissolved crystals in there. Don't want to pour real fast. Don't want glug, glug, glug and splash, 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 but I gotta show you this. It looks so pretty in this pan. And probably can't see down in there, but no. But there are still undissolved crystals in the bottom of this jug. Not a whole lot, but there's some down there. So we're going to go ahead and give it another shot here. Some more distilled water. Now you'll notice that was about a half a gallon that we just poured in there. I can tell you right now that that first cell is just about full. And you can mix this up more than that at a time if you want. I find it easier just to shake it up when it's only half a gallon in there. It tends to mix up a little better, I think. Probably be a good idea to use a screw top jug too. Then you don't have to sit there and hold the lid on. Got that windshield washer color to it. And I'm going to fill this up just about to the top. Not quite, because when we put our basket in there, we'll get some displacement, but then I'll just top it off after that. I want to show you what this looks like. So that is what our copper sulfate solution looks like in the pan. Isn't that pretty? So we'll get the other one filled up, and we'll get to the next step, which is putting the copper in and letting her go. Now that we have our new copper cells in there forever home, the last thing we need to do is to hook up the bars to the power supply, put them in the baskets, and we will sit there and watch. Now for doing that, same thing I did with the grounds. I just took some scrap wiring that I had laying around that's still insulated. I haven't cut the insulation off of this yet. Hooked them together so these will both be positive. And then I really like these to put the wire up against the bars. These are a ratcheting clamp. I picked these up at Mac's hardware store. They are not cheap. It is $12 for a pair of them, but they're very secure. So we're going to go ahead and we'll just lay our wire on the bar and clamp it down on there. The other thing I like about these clamps is it's a rubber end, and it's all plastic other than the ratcheting mechanism, which means that it's not going to corrode or anything like that. You'll notice I try to go on the flat side of the bar rather than the wavy side. These are hand poured bars, so the flat side is what was down in the mold. The wavy side is what's up top. So I'm going to set those in here. Just like that. I'm going to lay them down because otherwise they'll fall down. We are going to hook our positive wire up to that. I'm drying some copper over here in my oven, and she's a little toasty. So, we have those two bars hooked up. Next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to turn on our power supply. And I'll bring you over here for that. So we're hooked up to our power supply. Like I said, this is a brand new one, so we're going to turn the power on. You know what? I goofed. I forgot to put my fuse in there. So let's go ahead and get a fuse and put our fusible link in there, because I don't want to accidentally smoke a new power supply. We shall be right back. Okay, tragedy averted. You see I just wire nutted those together. I have my power supply down there. And apparently I'm out of 5 amp fuses, so I use a 10. Big thing is I don't want this to be an issue should it short out, so. Alright, try this again. We'll turn the power supply back on. And I am going to shoot for yeah, we don't really want 24 volts on that. So we're going to shoot for 12 volts. And we're going to shoot for 5 amps. This might have been helpful if I'd have read the owner's manual first. So, there we have it set. I set it for 12 volts and 5 amps. Right now we are at 12 volts, pulling 0.81 amps. Kind of like to see the amps a little higher than that. The amps is what plates it to the stainless, but that'll vary as we go, and we'll see what happens as we get to going on here. But that's the copper cells, the two new ones. So we're going to be doing a yield video on these to see what kind of yield we're getting out of these, because I'm kind of curious. I have a lot of copper I got to do. I don't want to build 800 of these, but it's kind of looking like that might be the case. So, and you can see it's starting to work its way up. So as this gets to go, and it'll come up. Also, I've just put a cap over the top of the holes that I have on here for filling them. That way nothing gets in through those holes, but I can still access them for filling. Alright, well, that's all for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. Happy scrapping!